We're going into a new type of presentation now, which is the persuasive presentation. And I want to talk about how this is different from prior types of presentations and how it's the same. I also want to talk about how there are differences between persuasive presentations and argumentative presentations. They are similar but different. One of the confusing things I think about learning about this particular kind of presentation is that we're all accustomed to seeing what we think are persuasive or argumentative presentations on TikTok or on cable TV or in the cafeteria or the coffee shop, where people just basically disagree with each other and get into something of an argument. You see it on cable TV all the time, where people who the host will bring up a topic and then bring on 3 or 4 people who will just basically yell at each other. That's neither persuasive nor argumentative. It's just TV. You see this on TikTok all the time, where a lot of TikTok, of course, is just entertainment, but sometimes people are trying to make a point, and typically they do it very badly. So hopefully one of the things that you can get out of this is how to be persuasive without getting in the other person's face, and by using techniques and processes to make your case. The textbook talks about the Greek triangle or Aristotle's triangle, and I don't want to get too heavy into theory or philosophy here, but I do want to mention the three basic legs of any good communication, but persuasive communication in particular. So ethos. And I want to focus on ethos for just a moment, because ethos refers to the credibility you bring to the presentation. How do you do that? Wear a shirt and tie, have a nice haircut, smile at your audience? Not really. The way you do that is you do your research ahead of time, and you use that research to help make and substantiate your point. And so it can't just be anecdotal evidence. And by anecdotal evidence, what I mean is stories. You know, telling stories that you hope will make your point. A story about a person to help drive home your point or to help illustrate your point can be very powerful if it is part of the process of using credible data research to make your point more powerfully and more clearly and more based on actual evidence as opposed to just emotion. Which brings us to pathos. Pathos is important in communication. You don't want it to just be dry. You don't want to just throw statistics at people. You do need to make your case. And how do you do that? You tell stories. Telling stories by itself is not an appropriate way to be persuasive. Using stories to illustrate or to introduce a topic, completely appropriate. And one of the most powerful ways to do this is to tell a story about yourself or about something that you have experienced or seen or observed. So it can be an important partner to ethos. And finally, we get to logos, which is just rational thought, what we might call critical thinking. This is using your ability and the ability of your audience to appreciate just common sense. Use the ability of nearly all human beings to use their common sense to make decisions. Now, a lot of things that on the surface appear to be clear using common sense actually end up not being true, which is why you use data research and that kind of thing to support it. So these three things, neither of them is useful in and of itself. Three of them together used to make your presentation, particularly your persuasive presentation, can be a powerful team that each of which has a role to play in delivering your message. So I think this is relatively easy to follow, and I'm going to leave this slide up here for a little bit. And if you want to spend some more time with this slide, just pause the YouTube video that this is from and review it. This comes directly out of your textbook, so there is additional information in your textbook about this. But when we're making a persuasive presentation, which is what the one coming up is all about, we will tend to lean a little more on pathos, on using emotion. And as I said, I repeat, it can't be by itself. You can't just make an emotional plea or emotional argument all by itself. But this is going to tend to be more based on a human-to-human contact, person-to-person contact, using feelings to help make your point. In an argumentative presentation, and it's not, the term argumentative isn't particularly, when you first think of it, you think of two people yelling at each other. That's not really what an argumentative communication is all about. It's more like debate. And so if you've ever watched an official debate, not political debates, but a debate at a high school or college, they are really driving home common sense, research, logic, data. They're really focusing on that because they want to make their case. They want to overwhelm everybody with information that is relevant, and they're not going to rely so much on the emotional or personal angle in the presentation. They may even, and they probably will, make reference to arguments against the point they're trying to make so they can then bat them down. That is an argumentative approach. In persuasive, you don't necessarily want to raise the other side, although you certainly can, but that's less important than using a combination of your research and storytelling and connection to people's emotions to make your case. So, to repeat, we want to cause people to start to think about something in a different way. You want to do it in a non-threatening way. You want to do it in a way that is both logical but brings in pathos, the sense of humanity, the sense of personness in the conversation. And you're wanting to help them think and feel and behave maybe just a little differently than they had before they saw your presentation. So to finish up here, you're not going to change most people's minds with one presentation. And probably that's not your goal. I mean, if you can move people in some way and they change their perspectives or their views, great. But changing another person's beliefs, attitudes, or values, what the textbook refers to as BAVs, I don't like acronyms, so I don't use them, but this whole idea of changing someone's belief, attitude, or value is really difficult. Think about yourself. you have probably very strongly held beliefs, attitudes, and values. These have become part of you, and it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 80. You have them. Now, these will probably change over time, but it's over time. So understand that about your audience as well. You're not going to cause a sudden shift in perspective from the majority of your audience with one presentation. And so that's not your goal. It can be helpful if you start by helping people understand where you and they agree, what beliefs, values, attitudes you share with them. If you're going to talk about the issue of legalizing marijuana and you're opposed to it, you can talk about how we all believe that it is not a good thing to become addicted to drugs, and we are all concerned for the health and well-being of our fellow community members, neighbors, family members, etc. I mean, that's a shared value, and from that you can build outward to talk about the dicier part of your subject. But it's helpful to start with something where you're acknowledging that there is general agreement and starting from that perspective. Finally, you're thinking long-term here. So if you get someone, again, just start thinking about it. I never thought about that before. Well, that's interesting. You have succeeded. If you get someone to just go that far, you've succeeded. So that's your real objective here, is to plant with someone, with your audience, an opportunity to think about something in a different way. If you can do that, you have succeeded in your persuasive presentation, and you're thinking in the longer term. This is why people who are engaged in trying to change perspectives, and our final presentation in this course will be one on changing culture, changing society. Well, that is the ultimate challenge, and it doesn't ever happen with one speech. One speech can become memorable. We've talked about a lot of those speeches. You've seen a lot of those speeches so far in this course that had a major impact. But did they overnight change people's behavior? Probably not. But they began people thinking about, I never thought about it that way before. That's your objective with a persuasive presentation.